Do you think that like hugging a robot, no matter how human-like that robot is, do you think that will ever feel like hugging your mum? Do you know what I mean? My son is now 1 year old, right? And now my son is hanging out with my friends' kids. I don't know how AI could ever replicate that feeling.
Yeah, I think this also like public speaking and being a speaker at TED is about like communication, storytelling. Why do you think that so many people still struggle with that skill?
And this is where for me, mindset is so important, because one of my managers, he says to me like, pressure is a responsibility. If I'm feeling pressure, it's because someone has believed that I can do something. So that means someone believes in me enough to put that pressure on me. So my job is to just go and do what that person thinks I can do.
Welcome and hi, Tolu, to the Naked Thoughts podcast. Naked Thoughts is like a community of creators, founders who want to build something and face certain challenges. And thanks to you, this podcast exists, because I know back then when we met at a networking event in Vienna, you gave me the last push to start and to kick it off, this project. So thank you again. and thank you for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here. And yeah, amazing to be on a podcast that I was a very little part in helping you to start. So yeah, this for me is always, it's very humbling, and it's, I'm just so happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. No, I'm so curious about our conversation we will have. We will discuss a lot of topics. But first of all, besides podcasting, besides leadership, besides data, AI, who is Tolu really? And what is your story so far?
That is a very big question to begin with. So who am I? I am a husband. I am a father. I am a Christian. I am an immigrant. I am an ex-semi-professional basketball player. I love data. I'm super curious. I am lots of things. I'm a brother. I'm a friend. Lots of different things. But I think probably the thread that goes through everything is trying to be curious, trying to be kind, and trying to add value, and trying to just leave things better than when I came, right? It's not always that, you're going to go into bad situations, but even if you go into a good situation, how can I add a bit of value and leave things, people, situations better than I came? That's really me at the core. I think in terms of my story, so I came to the UK when I was 2 years old. I was born in Nigeria to parents who were, my mum's a lawyer, my dad's a software engineer, which are like solid Nigerian careers. Yeah. But when we came to England, we had to start everything again, right? So, we lived in London for a while, and we had like nothing when I was growing up, and just watching my parents really like rebuild their lives. And my parents had 4 children. So doing that with 4 kids, it was quite a lot, but it really shaped me in terms of how I approach life and challenges and just perseverance. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah. Coming like from a, different culture, and now then growing up in the UK, how would you define home for yourself?
I'm laughing because that was the topic of the talk that I gave when we met in Vienna, right? And I'm considering if I should try and remember what I said or not. But I think for me, I feel at home in lots of different scenarios very quickly, because I feel like I've been back to Nigeria and I didn't really, in some ways, feel like that was home. But at the same time, England doesn't always feel like home initially. Mm-hmm. And so I really had to decide to myself that I make home wherever I go, right? So, last week, we went to a hotel for the night with my wife and my son, and I made that feel like home for that one night, right? So for me, home is really just about feeling like I belong and making sure that actually wherever I go for however short a time or long a time, I can feel like home. Because, so for example, in basketball, there's this concept that's called home court advantage, right? So the home team has their fans, they've got all their comfort. So, you wake up in your own bed, you eat the food that you want to eat, you practice in your own arena. And usually the home team wins more often than not. So for me, I try and make sure that, wherever I am, I have that home court advantage. I have that comfort. I feel like I have people who can be not my fans in that weird way, but people who can be friendly with me and support me. So for example, when we go to the hotel, I'm very open with the staff that are there, and, I engage in conversations or whatever it is. And that makes you feel like home because there's recognition there. I familiarize myself with the surroundings because then I know where I'm going and I can see different things. So yeah, I just try and make home as quickly as possible wherever I am.
Mm. Do you think it's always possible to build home wherever you are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I'm a very extreme accountability and extreme responsibility kind of person. So for me, I want to control the outcomes in my life as much as possible. So let's say, for example, I'm in a hostile environment, right? So when I played basketball, you'd go to away games and, the teams, the crowds there are hostile, right? But within that, you have to create your own little bit of home, right? Even where people are like shouting rude things at you and trying to distract you, you have to make your own bits of home, right? And whether that's, I still have my same routines with my teammates, for example, or, I have my own routines that I go through that bring me that comfort and make me feel like home. There's always something that you can do, in my opinion, there's always something you can do to feel like home.
Okay, interesting. What do you have you mentioned already a lot, but do you have kind of a list of things or tasks you can do? Because I think many people out there are struggling with this, especially maybe people who also like moving countries, or in my case, for example, now I lived in Spain for a while now, coming back to Austria, but it doesn't feel like as it was. Is there a framework or something you could share that might help those kind of people?
So when I did the talk, I think the H was about your habits, right? So, for example, you're moving back to Vienna after being in Spain for a while. What are some of the habits that you can create with you and your girlfriend that, maybe on a Saturday we go and walk in a local park, or every morning we have a certain type of breakfast or whatever it is. Like, what are some of the habits that you can create that will start to get you feeling a bit more like it's home? Because I think when we move somewhere, a lot of it is about familiarity, right? So like, how familiar do we feel with a place? And, you can create that. So for example, when we were in Vienna, I took a walk around the whole area. I walked for like maybe half an hour, and I thought, oh, okay, there's a supermarket here. There's another one there. Oh, there's a massage parlor. Like, you just take a walk around and just be really open to seeing new things, because I think that exposure is also good for creating connections in your brain, and it makes you feel connected to a place. So I think the first thing for me is about your habits. So what are some of the habits that you can form? So for example, one thing I like to do is I like to find whether it's a gym or a basketball court wherever I go, right? So if I'm going to be somewhere for any amount of time, I will know where the gym is and I will know where I can go and play basketball, watch basketball, because that's comfort for me. I'll also look for like Lebanese food because I love Lebanese food, So I find my little habits that I have where I live, and then I can bring that into my new place. I think the O was for openness. So that's really just about, sometimes when we don't feel safe, we kind of close ourselves off, right? So we don't make lots of eye contact because we're in a new country. We don't say hi to people like we would if we were comfortable. We're not always open to opportunities and different scenarios. So for me, when I go to a new place, I always go in like head up, eyes open. I'm looking for the people that are willing to engage. I'm looking for the people that might be like-minded to me. I'm looking for the opportunities. So in England, for example, when you're on the tube, everybody is like eyes down, not looking around. But actually, if you look up on the tube, you'll be surprised the kind of just little, non-verbal interactions you can have with different people. So for me, openness is a really, really big way for you to feel like home. It's huge. I'm trying to remember what M was, and I can't. So M is for making connections. So that is, when you go into the grocery store, having a conversation with the person that serves you. It's, if you're staying in a hotel, actually engaging with the receptionist and asking questions. It could be, if you find a gym, actually talking to someone in between sets. Or if you've got a dog and you go for a walk, having another conversation with someone else who's walking their dog. It's really important that as you're going through your day-to-day, you make those connections, because it says, I think it was Cheers or whatever, that TV show, it says, where everybody knows your name. Like that's what home is for a lot of people, is being able to walk down the street. And so I was like, oh, hey, Jacob, how are you doing? Like those kind of things are really important. But if you're not intentional about making connections, it's very easy to not connect with people. In this world we live in now, where everyone's on their phones all the time, people spend a lot more time indoors, people work from home, it's really easy to not make connections. So you've got to be really intentional about doing that. And then the E is about exploring. So that's part of what I mentioned earlier, is just explore your local area, figure out what's going on. There are so many things happening in any city or any town that you can't even fathom the things that are happening, So wow. If you're just a little bit explorative, you'll get yourself connected into lots of those things. And a lot of them are free. It's not even like you need to have lots of money to do it. You just need to be a little bit brave to go out and explore.
How did you come up with that framework? Is it was like, I guess, own experience, but how did you get together all those different aspects and advice?
So I was really just trying to think back over what are some of the things that I've consistently done in my life, whether consciously or unconsciously, right? So, when it comes to like opportunities and openness and exploring, I just looked back over my life and realized like that's just been a constant theme throughout anything that I've done. Not always on purpose, but I think part of my personality and how I was raised was that, you explore, you engage, you try and figure things out. So like I said, my dad's an engineer, my mum's a lawyer. My dad loves taking stuff apart, understanding how everything works, being super curious. My mum loves like reasoning and not arguing, but, debating and figuring things out and having conversations with people. And, that feeds into why I love podcasting, right? Is because within a podcast, within an hour of meeting a stranger, you could be really, really close with that person. It's such a beautiful medium. And now that, we can do this on Riverside, like, we're in totally different countries right now and we can still have this connection. So, I think it was just really looking through, like, what are some of those themes in my life? And, I'm someone that makes connections relatively easily. And my secret behind that is that, like, I'm just super interested in you. Like, if I meet a new person, and that's what I think a lot of people are worried about is, am I interesting enough? Will people find me funny? Will people enjoy our conversation? But what I found is that it almost doesn't matter how interesting or uninteresting my life is. If I can be interested in the person that's opposite me, if I can find them funny, people walk away from that conversation feeling like they had a really good connection. And I didn't even have to open myself up that much if I'm nervous about it, but just being interested in other people, it makes it really easy to make connections, like super easy. And that's what I think often people don't know. We're always taught like, well, you have to have something to say. No, you just have to learn how to listen and ask questions. And actually it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult at all.
Also, now switching a bit context, you've had like a fascinating career. So like you were almost already yourself into a pro basketball player. You had a career then across like a corporate career, across like leadership, data, especially in the AI. How did the journey evolve?
So when I was doing my degree, I was really fortunate to do a year in the USA. And one of the courses that I took was motivation and leadership, right? And one of the things that they said was that the best leaders have almost like a squiggly career. So, we think of a career of, okay, I'm going to start at this level, I'm going to go to this, and then I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to go to this. But they said often the best leaders are those that start in, finance, move into marketing, move into this, move into that. So that really set my mind when I was going into my career that actually I want to do we call them like a grad scheme. So like a graduate program where I try different things, right? Because when I was leaving university, I thought I wanted to be in sales and marketing. I thought, oh, it's great. I love it. I did that rotation on my grad scheme and I hated it. And I was terrible at it, right? But data was something that I would have never thought of in my life, but I was really good at it and I absolutely loved it, right? So that kind of openness to trying new things really set me on a really good trajectory for my career. And then, because I come from a business and, that kind of communications and media background, that gave me a really good advantage in the data space because a lot of data people love to create code and do all the stuff, but they hate talking to people, right? But I
Yeah.
loved talking to people, loved selling things, but I also loved the data side. So being a bit of a hybrid put me at a really, really good advantage when I would then go into sales meetings and things like that as a data person, and I could actually add value. So, I was just really fortunate with that kind of, my personality makeup. But at the same time, I had amazing leaders at every stage of my career. Like when I look back, I don't think I've never really, I've had, I think maybe one leader that I would say wasn't great, but over a 15-year career, that's actually a pretty good run. Yeah. And I remember one of my managers, Wayne, he said to me once, he said, and this was maybe 2 years into my career, he said, I want to make you comfortable where I can put you in any situation. You can ask the right questions and you can get to the right outcome, right? And that really set my whole mindset for my career of it doesn't matter what I'm doing, it doesn't matter what company I'm working with or for. If I can be curious and I can ask the right questions, I can get to good outcomes. So for example, I've just moved into aviation. So now I work at an airport, right? I've never worked in aviation in my life. There are acronyms, there's, regulation, regulatory stuff. Yeah. There's all this stuff. But, in 6 months, I've been able to have a really good impact just because I'm open to asking questions that might seem stupid, and then figuring out how do I get from those questions to value for people. That's actually been really, really helpful for me. And that's how I was raised through my career, was that, if you land in a situation, ask lots of questions, understand people's motivations, understand what makes other people look good. And then that's what I deliver, right? If I focus on making my boss look good or my stakeholders look good, automatically I'll be fine. That's my focus, is make other people look good. And then my stuff is taken care of. It's not a problem.
Yeah. Why do you think is that good leaders, or you mentioned it on average, good leaders worked in different areas? Why do you think is that?
I think, no, that's a really good question. I think it's because when you try lots of different things, you understand what works and what doesn't work in different situations. Mm-hmm. And I think also people that are willing to do that are very adaptable. And I think that being adaptable is one of the biggest life skills that people can have. And that, being willing to almost start again, because when you go into a new industry or a new vertical or whatever it is, you are going to feel really stupid sometimes, right? Because you're going to be hearing people who've been working there for 10 years who are better than you at what they do. You're going to be leading those people, right? So I think it takes a certain type of humility as well to be able to go into that situation and say, look, I'm not the best at this thing, but I need you, my team, to help me be good. That creates a really nice dynamic, actually, if you can live with the fact that your team is better than you at stuff.
How important do you think are good leaders, and what do you think makes a good leader?
I think it's probably one of the most important things for me is great leadership. And just to clarify, it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect, right? But it means that your intentions are good. You're trying to be good. That's really important. Intention is really, really important. And I think what makes a great leader is someone who creates security for their team. And that doesn't mean security in terms of, I'm comfortable with bad performance, but it means that, I'm comfortable that if my boss is giving me constructive criticism or feedback, it's because he wants the best for me. It's not because he's out to get me. Safe in terms of, I will try new things because I know that my boss has got my back. Safe to push back because my leader has given me that confidence. So I think psychological safety is really, really important. I think strategic thinking is really, really important. So Wayne, the manager that I mentioned, we called him Batman, right? Because this guy, the way that he thinks about things and the strategy. So, Batman, he's the superhero that doesn't have any superpowers, right? His superpower is being rich and good looking, right? But he knows how to use what he has. And that was Wayne. He knew how to use what he had. He knew how to, make the right relationships and have the right allegiances and do the right pieces of work and say no in the right ways. And just watching how he operated, like it really changed me as a person. So I think having someone who's really strategic, but then also someone who's willing to teach you, right? So sometimes, we'd be in meetings and he would do a certain thing. And then after the meeting, we'd be walking somewhere. He'd go, do you know why I did that? Or do you know why this went this way? And he would break it down to us why he did what he did, So It's great being strategic, but if you can't teach it, that's a little bit of a problem. So I think being a good teacher and being patient is also really important.
Do you think that good leadership can be taught?
100%. 100%. I think often we talk about how, well, it's just my personality, But for me, like, that's just a bit of an excuse. Like, you can learn, you can grow, you can adapt, Yes, there might be things where, like, that's your initial response. But my responsibility is, what do I do with that? Do you know what I mean? What do I do between when I'm triggered or when something happens and what comes out of my mouth or what happens on my face? Like, that gap is my responsibility. And that's the bit that I think we need to learn and grow, is in that gap between my natural response and my natural personality and what's actually needed from me in that situation.
On the other hand, is there a difference between like a leader and a manager? Because you often say like there's those, I think there are a lot of like images out there where you see like what is a manager and the leader. Could you describe from your point of view, what are the differences?
I think there is a difference, but I think at the same time, it almost doesn't matter, if that makes sense. Because I feel like a manager is a bit more positional, right? Like, I am your manager, you have to do this. I think that leadership isn't always about position. It's about influence, is what I'd probably say. Yeah, that's probably what I would say, is that, management is about authority and leadership is about influence. And I think you don't have to have a title to be a leader, right? What you'll find often in corporate is that some of the people with no titles are the ones who lead, right? Because they have influence. So for me, my question is, what outcomes do you want? And why would you want to be a manager versus a leader? What's the question behind the question?
What I'm asking myself is, of course, there are different types of leaders, but also maybe you as a leader, how do you find the sweet spot between like being empathetic, but also like demanding performance? How do you deal with that? And maybe you can also maybe reveal, I guess you lead a couple of people. So how do you deal with that in your daily life?
I love where that question's come from. I think that the balance is about understanding people, right? So, for example, if I get to know you, right, in a corporate situation, or even like as an interviewer, as a podcast or whatever, I need to understand, what are you capable of, right? That's one part, right? Is what capability do you have? I need to understand, how willing are you to move towards that capability, right? Because there are lots of very talented people, but so many people are not willing to go on the journey to become better. And as a leader, my job is to work with your capability and your willingness to get to the best outcome, right? So sometimes you are going to give me excuses, right? But if we've had a proper conversation up front, it's like, Jacob, I'm going to push you, right? My job is to push you. Yeah, if we're teammates, your job is to push me, my job is to push you. So sometimes you are going to give me excuses and I'm not going to take it. We almost have to agree that beforehand, right? I need to understand, how much do you want to be pushed? And that's my job, right? Is to understand you, your motivations. Is this actually what you want? I can't force that on you.
Yeah.
Right? So many people are trying to drag people to places where they don't even want to go. So for example, when we met, I could tell that you did really want to start a podcast, but you just weren't sure. Right? So I could be quite pushy with you and say, just do the thing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, because you kind of gave me that permission based on our conversation.
Yeah.
Right? There are some people who I talk to and you kind of think that you want to start it, but you're also not willing to do the stuff to do it. So in that situation, I'm not going to push you too much. I'll encourage you and say, look, I think you could do it or whatever it is. But at the core of it, they might not be willing to do the stuff and they're not willing to go on the journey. So that's where, for me, that's that balance between empathy and helping people to get stuff done. Because for me, I don't want to drag people to places they don't want to go.
Yeah.
So that's my job, is to understand, to be willing to ask the uncomfortable questions. So if someone came to me and said, look, I want to get promoted in a year, right? My job is to find out, why do you want to get promoted in a year? What are you willing to do to get promoted in a year? Are you willing to take on crap projects that no one else wants to do that might make you work till 10 p.m. at night because you want to get promoted in a year? I need to understand where your boundaries are.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I would say I would balance between empathy and performance. What this doesn't take into account, stuff like if you've got family bereavements and stuff like that, empathy is always where you lean into. Like that kind of thing, like that's quite clear cut. But when it comes to someone is finding something hard or someone just wants to quit, that's where it comes back to, what work did I do at the beginning to figure out where they want to go and how far are they willing to go to get there?
What do you think, as a leader, you get to know, well, as you mentioned, you lead your employees and your team and etc. What do you think motivates them the most? I will give you some examples: fear, purpose, recognition, belonging, or any other examples you might have.
Everybody is different. Everybody's different. So, for example, I don't particularly care for recognition. Like, I don't particularly care. Titles, all that kind of stuff, they don't mean anything to me, right?
Mm.
For me, what I want is, I want to make things better, right? And whether you recognize that or not, I'm not really that fussed. And I want to earn really good money. Like, those are my motivating things, right? Add value, make money, enjoy what I do, right? Some people, like you said, are motivated by fear because when they were growing up, they didn't have X, Y, Z or what. Like, everybody is so different. There's not one thing that motivates people. And that for me that's what separates leaders, is can you figure out what motivates that person and what's important to that person?
Yeah.
That's your job as a leader, is to understand your people and help them, serve them, give them the things that they need. But also sometimes people don't know what they need and what they want and what really motivates them. So you need to really dig into that.
Yeah. So that's also like the responsibility of the leader then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because where people feel known and understood, they feel safe. And that goes back to what we were saying about home, right? Where you feel known, understood, familiar, like that's part of being at home. So that for me that's a leader's job, is to create that place where people can feel at home.
You now work like in data and AI. How do you think, also like looking into the future, and AI may replace like many jobs? How do you think AI will influence, like in general, the job situation, and also will it affect leadership itself?
It's really interesting because in a lot of ways, AI is an amplifier, if that makes sense. So the people that are really good are using AI to be really good at scale. The people that are really bad are using AI to be really bad at scale. So I think that there's an element of it just amplifies who you are. If you're curious and you like to try new things, AI is literally going to revolutionize your life, right? If you're not going to get very much from it. So I think that there's an element of it just amplifies who you are and what you like to do and the impact that you're going to have. And that's why you see people, Elon Musk, whether you love him or hate him, like he's hugely magnifying his impact with AI, right?
Yeah.
Like whether you love him or hate it, just factually, he is. There's a lot of people who are lazy and they're just using it to be more lazy, So I think that there's an element of humans always need other humans and human connection. So for me personally, with the kind of things that I'm noticing is that people want more in-person things and connection and things like that. Yes, there are lots of people who just want to be with their AI, LLM, but also there are lots of people who are like, but I need to go and see humans. So we're seeing a lot more in-person things happening, especially after COVID. in this AI space, people want more real. And that's the other thing, is that it's a lot harder to tell what's real and fake now.
Yeah.
So people like are going to want that in-person experience more. And I think as a leader, what's really going to differentiate you is how you can use the experiences that you've had to serve your employees, right? Because AI is never going to have had the experiences that I've had. It can even read stories about what I've done, but it doesn't know how I felt. It doesn't know as a human what that means or feels like. And it may never. It may do at some point, but I don't know that. But AI doesn't have a soul like we have souls. Do you know what I mean? So there is something about humans that is different. So my thing is how do you maximize your stories, and how do you maximize your experiences? How do you maximize connection more than anything else?
Do you think there will be any skills or qualities that AI won't be able to replace?
I just think like, do you think that like hugging a robot, no matter how human-like that robot is, do you think that will ever feel like hugging your mum? Do you know what I mean? Like that same feeling, or like when you see an old friend, like if you see someone that you went to school with, someone that you had history with, and you see that person again, do you think, I don't know if a machine can replicate that? Or, so my son is now 1 year old, right? And now my son is hanging out with my friends' kids, right? Like, I don't know how AI could ever replicate that feeling that you get watching your child hang out with someone else's child who was your friend. Like that kind of stuff. I don't know how AI can ever match that.
In the business aspect, what do you think?
I think that as AI gets better and better, I'm not sure if there is going to be anything that AI and robots and stuff won't be able to do. I don't know. Yeah, like they got robots that can like backflip and crack eggs and do a lot of human things. So I don't know, actually. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, in my episode with Amit, I think you met him also at the network.
I love Amit. Yeah.
He mentioned that like communication will never be replaced by, or never be able to be replaced by AI.
I feel like I hope that it can't, but I'm not sure, because they are cloning everything, and it's learned like this is 1 million motivational speeches. So here's how you make a motivational speech. But I do wonder if at a point people are just going to want to hear from humans.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of agree with Amit, that maybe it won't. The skill might be replaced. It can be capable of doing the skill, but communication is most important because of the listener. Am I going to want to listen to a robot version of someone? Maybe not, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I kind of agree with him.
Which also leads me to another question. Do you think that in general, AI will make people more or less human? Because on the one hand, of course, people might look for meeting other people and then going out there and having like a real conversation. Or on the other hand, they might be tempted like to, be like, talk to the LLM and what do you think?
Oh, I'm hopeful that it will be the first one. But I think based on how people are behaving, I think that it takes a lot of bravery to be human in the real world, right? Because people might reject you. People might disagree with you. It does take a lot of bravery to be human. An LLM is built to placate you. It's built to go, Jacob, that's a great idea. Even though it's a terrible idea. Like, it can make you feel so smart even when you're having a dumb idea. So I think that there are a lot of people that don't want to do hard things. Right? And that's where I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that will lean into it, and almost just let AI tell them what to do, you know? But at the same time, I think there will be some people who that's not. I've always felt a bit uncomfortable when AI is like, that's a great idea. And I'm like, but is it though? Is it actually a great idea? Or are you just telling me that because you want me to keep using you? So I've always felt a little bit uncomfortable with it because I'm just spitballing ideas out of my head and I'm not a genius, right? Not every idea I have is going to be great. So I actually want the pushback. I actually want the accountability. I want the challenge. So for me, there's a really big limit on how I use AI because I just can't trust it. It's not really trying to help me. Its whole goal is to make me use it more. That's literally what it's built for, you know? But you and I, right, if we can build a friendship and a relationship, I know that your whole goal isn't to placate me. You know, you've got your own thoughts, your own experiences, your own challenge. And that I don't think you can replace. So I think, you know, that whole thing of like the rich get rich and the poor get poorer, I think it's going to be like that. The people who want challenge are going to become more human. The people who want to be brave are going to become more human. The people that don't are going to really like lean into that AI world and really get kind of sucked into that. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of both.
I do think that really like a lot of people, and also when you think of people who might be like, for example, I guess in the US and the UK, there are a lot of young men who not really feel seen and stuff like that, that they might turn into like a lot of AI and there will be like AI friends or AI sex dolls or whatever. I'm a bit concerned about that, but in general, I think that there are two directions. I think one, they are fully turn into AI, and one, they are really there will be the other group who will be try to really connect with real people and chase that.
I agree. And I just feel like, and this might sound a bit insensitive, but I feel like we don't take action like we used to, right? Yeah. So I feel like I've not personally struggled with mental health, so I can't also fully speak on it, right? So, you know, those people that you said, like, they don't feel seen and they don't feel like they feel a certain way. I feel like when you take action, a lot of those things kind of figure themselves out, right? So, and we have a bit of a bias towards action, right? Like you started a podcast and you reach out to people to be on your podcast. So we're already biased towards action, right? Yeah. But there are some people who like, they just couldn't do it. But my thing is like, take little bits of action and actually a lot of your problems get solved and you become better and you become different and you grow, and actually like that helps with those things. So it's like, you know, if you're having a tough moment, like going out for a walk is proven to help you because you're moving, you're doing something, you're seeing new things. Like taking action is really important. But I feel like as a society, we're biasing less and less towards action. And I think that's where, for me, it can be quite dangerous.
When I met you, I immediately felt that you're a curious person, a talkative person, a person who wants to get to know other people. My question would be now is, have you ever thought about creating something publicly, like the podcast, and putting yourself out there and having those kind of conversations online and in public, where other people can also like see you, hear you, judge you?
Yeah. So I did have, I do host quite a few podcasts for various like different companies and stuff like that. And I did actually have my own leadership podcast for a little bit. That was about emotional intelligence. So I think I did like 30 episodes or something like that of that. But I think, yeah. So I think what I really love though more than that is like what you've done, right? So helping someone like you to have your own conversations, you know, and actually almost like I probably prefer to be a bit more behind the scenes than I do necessarily always being on camera, is what I'd say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I really love like seeing what you've done with your podcast, for example. So I think so far I've helped, I think it's like 30 people start podcasts. And that for me is like, that's way bigger impact than even if I had another 100 episodes, you know, because if each of those people have 5 episodes, that's 150 episodes that I can look at and go like, I've actually been able to have a small impact in that. Like that, that for me is even better for me than, you know, having my own.
But was there any moment that you said, okay, I want to do this, or how did it emerge?
So one of my friends, you know, we'd always have like really enjoyable conversations between the two of us. And we were just like, we should just record it and see if anybody else is interested. So that's how I got started in podcasting. Was just with one of my friends. We just talk about like life and faith and family and business, whatever it was. And, you know, that's really how I got started. And then one of the things that I realized probably a couple of years after was that, you know, I've always had really good leaders in my career, but not everybody gets that privilege. So when I created my emotional intelligence podcast, that was really about bringing like great leaders to everyday people. So, you know, I didn't have any like super famous people on my podcast, but that's exactly what I wanted, because it should just be someone that I can look at and go, actually, I could be like Jacob, you know, because, okay, if I look at like Stephen Bartlett, like he's a millionaire and he's, you know, different and this, and he feels so far away. But if I can just look at someone like you and I and go, okay, they were able to be a really good leader and this is how. That's really why I created that space, was for just great leaders to have a place to share what they do day to day. It's not crazy, you know, it's just something you and I could do.
Did you feel ready when you started, or was it just...
I don't really believe in ready. Like, what does ready mean? Like, when do you feel ready to do anything? You know, when was the last time you did something where you actually felt ready? Like, we talk about ready, but I'm like, but what does that even mean? Like, when are you really ever ready? And that's where I go back to what my boss said is that, you know, I want you to feel that you can figure it out. You know, like, you can ask good questions and you can figure it out. Like, I don't know if I ever felt ready for most things, but I'm going to do it anyway and I'll figure it out.
I do think that you can prepare yourself for like certain, I don't know,
absolutely,
tasks, challenges, whatever. For me, that might feel a bit kind of ready, but in the end, probably you will never be like 100% ready for whatever you do.
No. And for me, I don't feel like it should be a qualification of whether I do something or I don't. Like, it shouldn't, for me, if I feel ready or not, it shouldn't really matter. I think when it comes to stuff like running a marathon, right? Like, yes, you should train to run a marathon. But in reality, if I just started running now and I kept running and I kept running, even if I stopped and I started, I could still run a marathon, right? Like, most people could run or walk a marathon, right? Are you ready to do it? No, but could you do it? Yeah, of course. Would you figure yourself out along the way and maybe get a bit injured? Yeah, of course. But most people could still do it. Do you see what I mean? And that's the same thing with me with podcasting. Is like, my first podcast, I think it wasn't even video. And then when I started video, I just used my laptop webcam and it looked dreadful. I didn't have a nice curated background. It was dreadful. Do you know what I mean? But I did it anyway. And it just, for me, it opens up so many doors when you do things that you feel like you might not be ready for.
Yeah.
You know, so so you were talking about Amit, and I got to do a TEDx at Amit's TEDx that he organizes in Prague.
Yeah.
And I was on stage with a guy who'd survived like all types of diseases and almost died like multiple times, like PhD people that have built massive companies. Like, I had, in my opinion, almost no business being on that stage, but like, I got to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't ready to do that at all. You know, it was really intimidating, but I got to do that. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it doesn't, I don't believe ready should stop me from doing things or not doing things. You know, and that was the biggest stage that I've ever spoken on so far, by far. And I didn't feel ready at all for that. Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah. How was that experience though? And what did it mean to you personally?
There are just so few things that are like that. And I think I was really fortunate because Amit's TEDx is one of the best organized TEDx's that I've ever seen, right? Like, he's been running it for about 10 years now. Yeah. And like, he puts so much care and attention, and the coaching that you get from him and the team beforehand, it's just exceptional. So I was really fortunate to do my TEDx in that environment. Even like the stage that like everything that they create is just, it's amazing. And I'm not someone who usually will script my talk, because TEDx, it's like you've got a time limit and you've got to hit certain, like, it's very like regimented. And so for me, that was very out of my comfort zone, because I'm very much when I normally do talks, a lot of it is engaging with the crowd and a bit of back and forth and having a conversation. But that one was very different. It was very different. And it took a lot of discipline that I didn't think I had.
Were you nervous?
Was I nervous? Is nervous the right word? I definitely knew I was doing something very big. And I definitely I was excited and I wanted to not screw up was probably what I felt. But like, it wasn't like before basketball games where I'd have nerves. You know, it was very different. It was very, very different. Very different. But then also, I was in a foreign country, right? So I was in Prague. And you've met me, I'm like almost 2 meters tall, and I'm a very black man. And I was in Prague, there was like maybe one other black person in that whole room. And there was like 500 people in there. So there was just a lot of dynamics happening at the same time. But for me, like, that's exactly where I want to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's very out of my comfort zone, but that's what I need to do. Like that. It was just the best experience, and I'm forever grateful to Amit to have given me that opportunity to do that. It was it was life changing for me. It was amazing.
Would you like to do it again?
Absolutely, I would.
I think this also like public speaking and being a speaker at TED is about like communication, storytelling. Why do you think that so many people still struggle with that skill?
I think it's fear, and it's not practicing it, right? And not taking those opportunities that are smaller to do it, right? So for example, at work, we do this like big planning day. And at the end of the day, everybody has to present back what they've been doing for the whole day. And every time it's like, who wants to present first? And everybody like sits on their hands and is like, right? Every time I say to my team, we are going first every time, right? Because you're out of your comfort zone, but also once you do it, you're done, So it's just little things like that where people are like, oh, can you just stand up and talk in front of these people? Like, we get scared in those moments. We think people are going to think I'm stupid or this or that. But what actually happens is people often admire the fact that you're willing to do that stuff. It's just, and it's not actually that difficult. It's just having a conversation. But we put a lot of extra pressure on it. And it comes back to that thing about being ready, right? Like we feel like I'm not ready to do that. But what does that even mean? Like, just stand up and talk. Like it's, just do the thing. It's really not that bad. And if you suck, you suck. It's okay. It's okay to suck at stuff. It's fine.
Do you feel that kind of pressure? Do you feel it when you had the TED Talk?
I think, and this is where for me, mindset is so important, because one of my managers, he says to me like, pressure is a responsibility, right? So if I'm feeling pressure, it's because someone has believed that I can do something, right? So Amit has believed that I can get up on his stage and give a good talk, right? So that means someone believes in me enough to put that pressure on me. So my job is to just go and do what that person thinks I can do. So Wayne, that same manager, he said to me, look, I think that you are like a Premier League football player. Yeah, you have the ability, the capability to go and play at that level, but you think you're Division 2. Yeah, and he said, I need you to go out and play like you're Premier League. And that gave me so much confidence to just go out and do stuff, right? Because he said, I think you could do it, but you don't believe you could do it, right? So when I feel pressure, so like the pressure of the TEDx, it's like, but Amit already thinks that I can do it. So I just have to go and show up for Amit, So for me, pressure is a privilege. And that's what it was. Pressure is a privilege, not a responsibility. Pressure is a privilege to have because someone's believed in you enough to give you that pressure. So yeah, that for me is how I try and approach the pressure. Like in basketball, if I'm getting the last shot, it's because my coach believes I can make the last shot. It's a privilege, That's a privilege. If someone is paying me to speak to their teams, they believe I can have a good impact. Like that's a privilege, So for me, I lean into it. If there's pressure, I'm like, that's great. If my boss's asked me to do something at work, that's great. He thinks I can do it. He's given me that responsibility to represent him. It's a privilege, So that for me takes out all the kind of like, it's like, no, but he thinks I can do it already, or she thinks I can do it. So just go do it.
Would that be advice also like for who are about to like have a talk, a speech or whatever? How would you take them the fear of like before going to stage?
Well, at a point, you also just have to enjoy the moment. And this is what for me was really special about the TEDx was when you got up on the stage, you could feel that everyone wanted you to do well. And it was such a weird feeling because often when you get up on a stage to talk, there's people that are a bit skeptical and this and that, but there's always going to be at least one person, hopefully, that wants you to do really well. And your job is almost to find that one person who's looking at you like, come on, like, tell me something like God, Yeah. And if you can just find that one person and deliver it even just for that one person, like, you will just enjoy it. And for me, it's just thinking of it as a conversation, but with lots of people, So it was just the most surreal feeling because everybody there had got up on a Saturday, bought a ticket to come and hear inspirational talks. Yeah. So when you go up there, everybody wants you to give them something good. Mm-hmm. And you can literally feel it. It was just the most surreal feeling. But most of the time when you speak somewhere, there's going to be at least one person who wants you to do really, really well. So my thing is find that one person, have a really good conversation with them, but also just enjoy it. Because one of the things that I actually loved as a basketball player was playing in places where they hated you and they wanted you to lose. Because there is no better feeling than when you like hit a big shot and the whole crowd that was like angry goes like deadly silent. You know, like that feeling is just epic. So if you go into a place and people absolutely hate you, like make it a game and make it like, okay, I want to like turn them around or I want to silence them or whatever it is. Like it's rare that as a speaker, you're going to go into that kind of environment. But even if you do, there are ways that you can like gamify it for yourself because that is the best feeling as an athlete is to like do something and the opposing crowd is just like silent. Like it's epic.
One advice would be like to find at least one person in the room who cheers you up a bit.
Yeah.
Second advice would be to think of the people who gave you or give you the opportunity to do that and to make them kind of feel proud. Anything else you might be able or you want to share with respect to like public speaking?
I think just enjoy it. Just learn to enjoy it. Learn to enjoy it. I think it's really important that whether it's public speaking or your job or, you know, whatever you're doing at home, like if you can learn to enjoy most things, your life will just be so much better, right? So even if I have to clean my house, how can I learn to enjoy cleaning my house? You know, I've got to change my son's like stanky nappy. How do I learn to enjoy, you know, doing that? Like there are so many things where like you have opportunities to learn to enjoy it. Or if you're doing a tough project at work, like if you can learn to enjoy most things, your life is just so much better. So much better.
Before we moving towards the end of the conversation, I wanted to ask you, because I have the sensation, I feel that, first of all, it's also like a reason why I started the podcast, because I saw like on LinkedIn, on Instagram, you present yourself like, or you see only successful people, right? You see all the wins, but not the failures. But still, I think that many successful people feel kind of like disconnected. And when they reach the first goal, they are unhappy because they want to go to the next level. Why do you think is that? Why are we still always pursuing something? Why are we not happy with what we have? Many of
I think it's human. I think it's I think it's a really fair point, but I think it's very human. And I think it's a really tough tension to hold with being content and being like, so for example, like I grew up very poor, right? And I remember when I started making money, like for me, it was always crazy to me that I could earn money that my parents, when they came to this country, can earn, right? Yeah. So for me, there was this real tension of, I've earned a decent amount of money, but I'm also very ambitious and I want to still earn more. And I had to learn to be like just super grateful for the fact that, look, I came from Nigeria, right? When I was 2 years old, my parents had no money for a long time. And now the kind of money that I earn is like, it's bonkers to me. But at the same time, I know that I have more potential, right? I know that actually that's nothing compared to my potential. So I really had to learn to hold both things of still like, this is actually amazing. If you told me at 15 that I would work at a company like Sky, right? Which is like a British institution, like Sky would pay me money, right? If you told 15-year-old me that, I would never have believed you. So I've got that like gratefulness. But at the same time, I don't want 50-year-old me to look back and go, dude, you let your foot off the gas and you could have done so much more, right? Because for me, like money is nice and in some ways important, but all it is, for me, it just shows that I'm giving value to the world, right? Because people are willing to pay for the problems that I solve. So for me, it's like, can I solve big problems? Because you get paid more money for the bigger problems you solve, right? So that's the kind of the balance that I try and hold. But it's a really difficult thing to do because often when you feel like you've done well, what you do is you ease off, right? So like when you've been on a diet and you've hit your goal, what's the first thing you do? You order a pizza, you get some ice cream, like that's human behavior. But I need to be really proud of what I've done and really pleased, but also still have that motivation to push to the next level. I think that's what a lot of people like. It's very human to struggle with that because it's difficult.
I think it has to do also with your definition of success.
100%.
How do you see success for yourself?
I see it as adding value. Can I add value to people and in a way that people feel good about, right? So yeah, that's really what it is. Can I add value to people? Can I solve problems for people and in a way that they also feel good about it? Because what I loved about hearing from you is that, we had that conversation and you went off and you did it. Do you know what I mean? Like you got enough from our conversation to actually just do it. And that for me, like there's few things that make me happier than that. That for me is success. Like this is a perfect example. That's success. Like, does it have to come with lots of money? No, absolutely not. But like, I was able to support you in achieving what you wanted to. Like that for me that's huge success. That's amazing.
Has the definition changed over the years for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think my understanding of the whole you get paid for the problems that you solve, I think has really evolved. I think before I'd always said, I want to earn X, Y, Z, but it was just, that was probably a bit more ego, right? Than necessarily understanding that value is what's important. And I had, when I did my grad scheme, there was a guy who said something to me that really shifted how I thought about it. Because he'd asked me, where do you want to work after your rotation? And I said, which one pays the most money, right? Because that's and also this comes from the fact that when my parents came to England, we were very poor, right? So my biggest fear growing up was being poor, right? So I was very like, money is the main thing. And that guy turned to me and he said, don't worry about the money. And I was like, you're crazy. But he said, no, don't worry about the money. Be really good at what you do, right? And the money will always follow. And that shifted my whole mindset around it. Just focus on being good, focus on adding value, focus on being kind and being humble and being like a supporter of people. And actually like the money generally figures itself out, because like if people like you and you deliver good work for them, why would they not give you loads of money? Like that's kind of how it works, like if you can deliver good work for people and you can build great relationships, the money is generally available. So that was a really big shift for me actually, in terms of how I saw success. Now for me, success is being good at what I do, adding that value, and helping people feel good about it in the process. I don't want to do that at the expense of people.
Talking about success, were there any achievements in your life where you say, okay, in the end, it mattered less than you expected?
I don't think so. I think so, like I mentioned earlier, so I come from a Christian background. And so I think that because of kind of how I frame this life, I don't probably put too much on accomplishments, if that makes sense. Because even if I had a podcast that had like 1 million listeners, like what does that really mean for like the rest of my life and eternity? Do you know what I mean? So I feel like all this stuff is cool and it's fun, but at the same time, it's not the be all and end all. And I think also one of my sisters passed probably about 10 years ago. And that also just puts so much into perspective, that like how little some of this stuff actually matters in the full scheme of like life and death, So I think it's probably a combination of those things where like, I don't know if I ever had like big accomplishments that I'd like really been striving towards, and that's where for me, it's like, be good at my job, get paid well, add value. Like if I can do those things, whatever that means. So like a TEDx, for example, that was a huge accomplishment for me, but I'd never even thought about doing one. Do you see what I mean? Like that was a really pleasant surprise, but I wouldn't have even in my dreams have said I would have done a TEDx, so I leave it quite open because, I heard this thing once I said like, God is in the mystery, right? If I can plan everything out, there's no room really for God. But if I can just focus on my principles and being a good human, then there's so much mystery out there as to what that can look like. And I leave that room for God to just like do God stuff with it. So to answer your question, I don't think so, because I don't think I've really set like, these are all the things I want to do,
Tolu, we have now already discussed, or you gave us a bit of a definition what home can be and how can you build your own home wherever you are. Then you talked a lot about leadership and what makes a good leader. And then you talked about we talked about public speaking and how you can overcome that fear of public speaking. And then now we stepped a bit into like a bit of personal growth and self-development, and also like how AI will shape our future. We've now more or less reached the end of our conversation, and I always have like a few questions left, which mostly the same for all the interview partners, and I'm curious to hear your answers also. You might know them already because some of them are copied from another successful podcast, but I like it. I like it also like to listen to the answers of many different people and then see what they really think about it. So my first question, what was the best advice you've ever been given or received?
Oh, it's torn between the one I mentioned about the go and be a Premier League player and the don't worry about the money. Between those two, those are probably the best.
Okay. On the other hand, what was the worst advice you've been followed for too long?
Okay, so I'm Nigerian by culture, and our culture is very big on respect for your elders. And I think that when I started to get into like college and university and the world of work, that respect was almost too much, right? So I had to really switch from respecting my elders, which, and this, don't get me wrong, like respect is always important. But for example, it would be weird for me to call my professors by their first name, right? Or if I was in the working world, if someone's more senior, I'd be very deferent to them, right? I'd always defer to them and but I had to learn that actually, like, I'm paid because of my ideas and to contribute. Yeah. So I had to kind of let go of the cultural side of things, still be respectful, but I had to be willing to challenge and to bring my own opinion and to do that kind of stuff. So that's probably what I would say would be the worst advice that I followed for too long.
Yeah, because
that's a beautiful question.
Because I think you in that kind of situation, you also deserved it, like to be there, and you worked for it. So then, question number 3: imagine somebody wants to build something, wants to start something, and feels paralyzed by fear, feels paralyzed by taking on the first step and doesn't know how. What advice would you give to him, her?
Take some kind of action. Like anything. So go and have a conversation with someone about your idea. Because I think, so there's this thing that they call like paralysis by analysis. So you think so much that you don't take any action. But what I've found so many times is that just the act of having the conversation with someone else will validate your idea, give you an encouragement, show you something you've not thought of. Even if they say it's a bad idea, like, just be open to hearing, okay, but why do you think that? Why do you think it won't work? Because actually there's probably something you've not thought of that if you can now bring into your thinking will make a massive difference. So my thing would be just start talking to people about your idea, but then take some action, right? So for example, with you starting your podcast, yes, talk to people about your idea, but then go and check out Riverside and get a free trial. Actually try recording a 5-minute video. I'm a big fan of, Atomic Habits. Where you do like little things every day. So take a little step towards your dream. So one of the things that I would love to do is like build houses and stuff like that, right? And I saw this plot of land near my house, and I just went online and tried to find out who owned it. And it was a company that was really local. So I just turned up one day at this company and asked to speak to the guy that owns it. And he spoke to me for like 10, 15 minutes and told me the history of his company. It's a family, it cost me nothing. Yeah. But it got me a little step closer towards my dream, right? So my thing is like, take a little bit of action, have a conversation, do a bit of research, reach out to someone who you would never like think of reaching out to. You just never know what will happen. So yeah, that would be my thing, is just take some action.
Question number 4. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to become a great leader?
Get yourself around other great leaders. So whether it's virtually, so find a podcast that talks about great leadership where you can soak and understand, but then also see if you can find yourself a mentor. We all have lots of great people around us if you're looking for it. So find someone who you think, actually, I love the way that they do X, Y, Z, and just buy them a coffee. Do you know what I mean? Go out for a walk with them, just get something, like spend some time with them. I think what often people don't think about is, if you're going to get a mentor, how do you also add value to them? So actually, can you do something for them too? So find a way to make yourself useful to them. Even if it's just, look, I would love to go to your meetings and take notes, or whatever it is, like, do something for them. But just by being around great leaders, you will start to understand what makes a great leader. And then just ask questions. Why did you do that in that meeting? When this person spoke to you like this, why did you respond that way? Ask questions.
My last and final question: if we strip away like your podcast, your work, your TED Talk, what gives still meaning to your life?
I would say faith and family. Because faith it's the kind of thing where no matter what is happening, faith can still be there. When things are great, faith should be there. When things are not great, faith should be there. Faith is, for me, it's everlasting, it's eternal. And then family, my son has no idea that I've done anything. Do you know what I mean? I'm just his dad. He just looks at me he's just happy to see me no matter what is happening. And, my son was in the womb for the TEDx. He was there, but not there. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
So, and he was in Vienna as well. He has no idea what's happening. He has no idea. And it's kind of great like that, because it's just, at the core of it, we could live in a really humble circumstance and just have each other, and just have family, and you can be happy. When we were growing up, I don't think I understood actually how poor we were until I was a bit older. But I just knew that my parents tried to be around as much as possible, and they loved me. That was enough. And that's given me security, to be in this world. I have that level of comfort and confidence because my parents gave me that. My dad made really conscious decisions about, almost limiting his career at some stages so that he could be home more. Yeah. He didn't take jobs that were really far away, even though it meant more money, so that he could be home. And, that's something that I'm now trying to do with my son, is saying, okay, I need to be really selective with the jobs that I take, because if I'm going to be traveling, 5 nights out of the week, I want to be home for bedtime and I want to see my son every day. But my dad gave me that, and that's what I'm trying to give to my son, is that presence of just being there. He doesn't care if we go on 2 holidays or 3, he cares that his dad is there as much as possible. So faith and family.
That's beautiful. Well, we're at the end of our conversation. Tolu, thank you so much. I really admire you as a person. I really admire what you're doing. And I think you're a super grounded and person. Thank you so much for taking the time and having the conversation with me and with everyone who listened to it. Thank you so much.
That is very kind of you. And I'm very grateful that you had me on. And I'm just super humbled by what you are doing with your podcast. And you're doing this in your second language. So for me, you are my hero, because you've asked amazing questions, and English isn't even your first language. So for me, amazing work. It's been a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tolu.